What's going on, wrestling fans? Welcome to the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast, part of the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast Network. I'm your host, Heath Mulligan, joined by the man, as always, Nick McDaniel. Nick, how you feeling, man? I know you've been battling a cold here the last couple of weeks. How you feeling today?
That. I mean, it's literally, it's not a cold. I guess it's allergies. I don't know what it is at this point. It's just the good old chest congestion, as they like to say. And I've been fighting it with every, I don't know what between steroids, antibiotics, and my wife's essential oil, whatever she's slapping on me these days. We're trying to fight it off. I'm getting there. I think I'll be good. Hopefully by next week, I'm hoping anyway. So, but it usually lasts a week or two anyway. So.
Well, I'm coming off 2 weeks of camp with another week. Literally, will get off this call, head back up to camp for another week. So I'm not sure what day it is. I'm not sure which way is north, but we are here to talk about indie wrestling. And fans, if you want to stay on top of all the Georgia indie wrestling news, you need to go to patreon.com/tapped-out-pod, where you get every episode early from the network, where you get a lot of behind the scenes stuff. You get extra episodes, coffees and cross faces. You got to go to YouTube. You got to hit that subscribe button. You need to scroll through the 8-year history of the show and like every video. And then you need to hit the bell so you get all the notifications of when a new episode or a new video is uploaded. You can also become a member through YouTube. And then maybe you're an audio person. Maybe you're listening on your commute. Maybe you're listening while you're jogging. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, wherever. Pretty much if you've got a podcast app, you can find all of the shows on the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast Network. So let's jump right in.
Pump the
with
brakes.
this. Oh, sorry.
I didn't tell you this. I completely,
Okay.
you know me, I love to just completely throw everything off track.
I love
I'm
it.
really, really excited. So, Myron and I recorded the national show last week,
Uh-huh.
and then I had teased a show that's coming
Yes.
Thursday. I had basically the essential final phone call with it to set it up. It's coming. This is kind of the stress, the importance of being a member, whether it's on YouTube or on Patreon, wherever. First things first, it's funny. I'm not going to tell you what the episode is because that's going to be part of why is it important to be a member. Fans are going to love it. I already go ahead and tell you that. The co-host, the host of the show, whatever you want to call it, I think I'm going to be the co-host. We went back and forth about who. I think I'm the co-host on this one that's coming.
Right.
It's going to be so cool to hear a perspective that is not just a fan on our network. I mean, I'm super excited that it'll be somebody who's got all the credibility in the world to say everything they're going to say. So that was what I was excited for. But the funny joke between the two of us, and I'm still not even going to tell you the name yet, we both are like, hey, let's record it. We're going to record the pilot Tuesday night.
Mm-hmm.
We hope it doesn't suck. So it'll release but to the behind the paywall for a while. And I actually told him that. I think I'm gonna leave it behind the paywall for a little while, maybe like a week or two, something. I don't know. We'll come up with a time frame. And then as we record more and we start producing, we're hoping it's a bi-weekly show, and it will be behind the paywall, and then we'll trickle it out like over time, and it may not be all of them. I told him that we might release one a month to the public, one behind the paywall, that type of thing. So we'll figure all these details out. But that's why we tell you, like, look, we are really working hard. And I even had a very long conversation with some talents last night in a locker room at a show that I was at about trying to do some collaboration with them. I had one at Southern Fried when I was there. So like I said, I get it, folks. A lot of people are like, why would I want to be a member other than just because I promise you I've been working on this, and there's more and more names slowly returning, and I think you're going to see some special things on the network here in the near future. So.
Yes. Can we say award-winning talent? That's what's coming to the network. You were telling me about that on Friday, and I got giddy because I'm like, yes, I am super excited for the future. So a lot of good things happening. There's never been a better time to become a member fan, so you need to jump on that now. So now let's jump into this week's Indy Rewind. We got to go all the way back a whole week to June 16th. This show was after we recorded the Change for Wrestling show that happened there at the PCW arena. And what I am told is that David Ali and Skrilla absolutely stole the show there. Pretty good crowd. First card of its kind, a total African American show. So kudos to Najicism and all those who pulled that off. Sound like it went really well, and I think they're planning shows for the future.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised, by the way. David Ali, Skrilla. Tangent number one for the show. I actually, I don't know if you saw, David Ali was on SmackDown. He was security, kind of like standing behind, commentary, and I saw it, shot him a message, and was like, "I see you, kid." You know what I mean? I like just it kind of makes the like I know some people don't value those appearances as much as others. I just think it's cool for those people. I mean, Hunter did recently say that security guys typically make great wrestlers down the road.
Yes.
So
yes.
but it was cool to see him on TV. I mean, I've been a big fan of him for a long, long time, and it was cool, for him and Skrilla to go in there and tear the house down at the at that Change for Wrestling show.
Well, it's always good to see talents getting those opportunities with WWE and AEW. They pay pretty well, and it's a memory, and it gets your foot in the door. It means your foot is in the door. So that's really, really good stuff. Action Wrestling was Friday night there in Tyrone, Georgia, the place that's been their home from the beginning. And the big story here was the first cage match in Action Wrestling history. Nick, you watched this show live on IWTV. What are your thoughts? Krule retained the title against Adam Priest. What are your thoughts about this fantastic match?
So yeah, I wanted to go to the show. My work day pushed me back so far that I just couldn't, because I told people, like, I was talking to somebody and I said, listen, if I can't leave before 3:00, I just can't make it to. I mean, it's literally diagonally on the opposite side of Atlanta. Mm-hmm. There's no good way to get there. And then I was just like, but look, that's the great thing about promotions like Action. On IWTV, live streaming, I literally just so once I knew I couldn't make it, I just kind of kept working. And when it was about time for that show to come on, I just wrapped up everything, ran upstairs, and literally just popped IWTV on my TV and just said, I'm going to watch this thing live. And, great show. Adam Priest and Krule put on an absolute old school classic cage match with a little bit of fire. I mean, that threw me a little bit. They brought the fire into the ring. The biggest statement, and I think I posted this on Facebook, most social media, one of them, I was like, wait, you mean you can get over without going over? Adam Priest look, he lost, but he completely elevated himself in a loss. He fought, and he fought. Now, against that monster, it didn't matter. He ended up, he took the loss, but he didn't quit. He kept fighting, and he just looked like an amazing underdog. And that feud had been stretching for over a year.
Yes.
Built, and it culminated in this cage match. I mean, obviously, we've always said I would never put money against Krule, right? Like, so that made sense. However, if you haven't been, you might want to keep an eye on Adam Priest, because I think there's a lot of there's more good days ahead of him than bad days. I would tell you that.
Yeah, and Adam Priest has been a part of the Action family there for a long time, and I'm interested. It's like you said, this has been a long time feud. This sounds like, hey, this is, a cage match is usually kind of a feud ender, or kind of getting ready for the next chapter. I'm very curious to see what Adam Priest does. I think he is. It was good. He wrestled the next night in Georgia. We'll get to that in a minute. I would definitely love to see Adam Priest work more places in Georgia. He's such a throwback, such a scrappy, good professional wrestler, and I really enjoy watching him work. So I'm interested to see what's next for him. This card, I mean, all of the Action Wrestling's cards really good, but when you look at this one from top to bottom, you see a lot of matchups we haven't seen before, and I think that's the criticism of Georgia. When I hear Georgia wrestlers criticize, this tangent number 2 maybe. When I hear Georgia wrestlers criticize Georgia wrestling, it is what's the same people working the same shows against the same people. I don't know that that's the case anymore. At least in a lot of the promotions we cover. Manders, one called Manders defeated the Wall Tyler Stevens to retain that Action title. You had the good hand. We had Buff and Fluff, who kind of earned a title shot at the last Action show, and they got a shot at the tag team titles. Fell a little short to the good hand. You had one. I mean, you watched it. Darian Bingston versus Alexander Lev. Had Lev been to Action Wrestling before?
I don't think so. I could be wrong. But again, another kid, like, it's cool to see guys branching out and elevating at these other places. Like, I kind of pull back a little bit to the match you talked about, Manders versus the Wall. Like, it's cool to see Tyler Stevens progressing. We can see it in front of us, and I always tell people, like, pay attention. You can see it. He was where he was just a year or two ago, and now to see him, like, creeping up cards. He was in that classics, championship match at Southern Fried, the ladder match. He's like, literally, this is a huge leap forward to jump to actually wrestling for the Action, wrestling title. So it's kind of cool to see. Is that one of the great things of, I'm like, tangent number 3, right? Is that one of the absolute great things about Action? Is it seems like I don't want to say they pride themselves on it, but they kind of, that one of their strengths is they give opportunities to a lot of people.
Right.
And a lot of times they're right. Like, they're right about giving that person the opportunity.
I think 100%. One of the ways that they give people opportunity, and fans, if you've not subscribed to IWTV, no better time than now. That's not a paid promotion. That's just the truth. Because Action returns with the city. You mentioned giving opportunities. Nothing does that more than the Scenic City Invitational. July the 11th is TWE's running live there in Chattanooga. The July 12th, July 13th is the Scenic City Invitational, the Action Future Showcase. We've seen people featured in those tournaments get signed, get opportunities, and this has become one of the premier independent promotions, not just in the Southeast, in the world. There are people that will travel. I just listened to an interview with Scott Hensley. I think he was interviewing with some guys in Germany. So this is, if you want to see some future stars, that's a great place to see it. And I'm going to be honest. There are oftentimes they give people opportunities like, I don't really get this person. Because we all have different tastes in wrestling. And there's a lot of wrestlers Scott Hensley likes that I'm like, I don't, and I'm sure vice versa. I'm sure there's wrestlers I like, Scott's like, but that's a great thing about wrestling is there's something for everybody. And then we've talked about this a lot. Action is really July 21st there at Das Barbecue in Atlanta. They're running multiple shows a month now. Like, it's not even a question. Like, they are running 2 to 3 shows a month.
And it's like Tyrone, Atlanta, Fayetteville, like boop, 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 boop. That's becoming a thing. And I think we're going to let's save that later because there's going to be another promotion that we have the same conversation about. And maybe that's the new thing.
Yes. I like the way you think. So that was Friday night. Saturday night this past weekend. A full night in Georgia, you think? Holy cow. Myron was at Hardcore Hell for Anarchy there at the Royston Dome. The first Anarchy show in Royston. Over 200 people at the show. Lots of things happening here. I mean, just looking at this. Alexander Lev defeated Colby Carino in a dog collar match. When and where can I watch that? You had Shane Marx defeating Nick Halen for the Anarchy Championship. So Anarchy saying, hey, it's a new day. It's a new era here. And then I saw several posts about this. So the Landmark Heritage title renamed the Georgia Heritage title. Jacob Ashworth successfully defended that title. And now the announcement's been made that title can be defended on any show in Georgia. So kind of like a traveling championship. Myron said he really enjoyed the show. Nick, what are your initial thoughts hearing about Hardcore Hell?
Look, loved a lot of the stuff we saw. I will backpedal up to that championship change, the Shane Marx defeating Nick Halen. I seem to remember last week us saying Nick Halen better be careful and not underestimate one Shane Marx, because he is an extremely, extremely talented wrestler, and I think he proved it that night. So kudos and congrats to Shane Marx. I think this makes him a 2-time Anarchy champion. But I kind of got a gut feeling that Nick Halen will not go off quietly into the night, that he will probably be back and he will be looking to recapture what he considers his Anarchy heavyweight championship. So, but Georgia wrestling's better with Anarchy back. That's all. That is one thing I want to get across. That has always been my stance, that Georgia wrestling's better with Anarchy, especially when it's running strong.
Yes, and it's their first show back. We don't know the next date. We're assuming that they're monthly, which is, back in their heyday, they were bi-monthly. So we're assuming they're going to be monthly. We don't have a July date yet, at least that I can see in front of us. They have announced for the next show, Aaron Stevens and Thomas Latimer from the NWA will be on that show. And a question that can be asked, we've seen territories popping up all around the country, NWA territories. Is Anarchy going to be the Georgia territory for the NWA?
Could be. They actually had this question a few weeks back on the national show. Somebody asked, Billy Corrigan's discussed having the territory system back, with the NWA, and is he going to have one like in Georgia, one in Tennessee, or is he going to have multiples in states, etc.? The questions was posed to us, like, what's to be gained by being that promotion and whatever. Well, look, I don't know. We haven't been told this, but there's some tethers there between Anarchy and NWA. But with Thomas Latimer, Aaron Stevens, Alexander Lev, and some other names, that are in NWA also working that show, could they be positioning themselves to be that promotion in Georgia? And I think that obvious answer is, yeah, they could be. Are they? I don't know. But, could they be? 100%.
Yeah. Here's another question that I just thought of. Anarchy over the last 4 or 5 years has had a lot of starts and stops. And there's such a reverence for Anarchy wrestling, maybe more so than any other promotion in Georgia. Part of the reverence was for the promotion. Part of the reverence was for the building. My question for you, for someone that's been a long time, you've covered Georgia wrestling, you know the pulse of the fans here in Georgia. If Anarchy again has a lull or it has to hit pause, since they're not in the Landmark arena anymore, and maybe this is just a dumb question, will fans be as quick to come back if they haven't built that rapport with the new regime and the new building? What are your thoughts on that? Or am I just completely wrong?
The funny, COVID is a bad thing just all across the board. Right. It really, really damaged wrestling on a lot of levels. And, that was what it was. Then Landmark, the building, Landmark, the building had its own issues, which caused, other problems with Anarchy. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think Anarchy, starting with this show, they drew a great number.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to slam their foot on the gas, and they're going to go 100 miles per hour and try to, this is a race. They're going to, this is a sprint and a marathon all in the same time. I would be more concerned if I was the other promotions in the Royston Dome than I would be Anarchy. That's just my opinion. Take that for what it is. I think Anarchy is built to survive because it always has been. If that makes any sense.
No, that's a very very good good point. It just has had a longer history, longer staying power for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, also, so Myron was at the Royston Dome for Hardcore Hell. You were in Buford, Georgia for Disruptor there at Tannery Row. You had Vari Morales defending that Disruptor title over Jimmy Wild. CB Suave defending the Party Animal title. But the match that you said stole the show was Slim J and Alan Angels.
By a mile, dude. Listen, you have a TNA talent in there with probably one of the most underrated Georgia wrestlers. Look, he was AEW, Ring of Honor, on and on and on, right? But he has been doing this thing for a couple decades now.
Yeah.
He cut a promo in that match before that match started about how the fans don't appreciate him and don't respect him for, as great as he is. And then, like I said, those two went in there and just, sometimes we forget. Like, that's, the segment we had last week, underappreciated, underrated. Okay, I might want to put a note down that Slim J's probably one of those that we underappreciated and underrated and should have been on that list because, but yeah, it's just cool to see where. It's funny that Alan Angels, to see where he came, even since we've been doing the podcast.
Yes.
To how good he is now, and to going in there with a dance partner like Slim J and just completely tearing the house down. It was, I could not put this match over enough. I really couldn't.
You also mentioned, I mentioned CB Suave defending the Party Animal title against Dan the Dad, making one of his more recent appearances in Georgia, if he's ever been there. What were your impressions of Dan the Dad?
If you have not seen the gimmick, go check it out. Listen, let's be brutally honest. I saw the poster, the ad. I hadn't seen a lot of him. I've never seen him work. And I was just kind of like, this sounds kind of goofy. Just for the record, it's kind of goofy. But goofy in all the right ways. It was funny. It was super entertaining. We always talk about a little bit something different. Okay, this wasn't Slim J versus Alan Angels.
Right.
But by the way, both could work really good. Obviously, CB Suave, super talented guy. But just the entertainment value added by those two just made the match different, which is awesome when you get a card like that where the things are just different. So all the matches, there were 9 matches on this card.
Wow.
And this match stood out because of that reason, that it was just the character Dan the Dad made it so much different.
And real quick, if you're listening to us for the first time, you're thinking 9 matches. That's what the venue asked for. The venue is asking for longer shows and longer times, and Disruptor is delivering on that. One thing Disruptor always delivers on, they always have great women's matches. Ivy Malibu's becoming kind of a focal point there at Disruptor. One other thing you mentioned was we've seen Dave Stage at different places, but he finally got a huge win in a 4-way match with some other pretty big accomplished wrestlers. And you think this may be the start of something for Dave Stage?
Dave Stage may have found a home at Disruptor. He got a 1, 2, 3. Listen, in 4-way matches, like it or don't like what I'm about to say, doesn't matter how you get the pin.
Right.
He got a pin on Luke Sampson, who has been a very solid focal point there and a focal piece for Disruptor Wrestling. Dave Stage picked up a massive win in one of his, his first match there. And so I kind of leaned back and went, Dave Stage probably found a home. I think he's about to make a run here. If he's picking up those kind of wins, that's a big deal.
So Dave Stage making his first appearance at Disruptor, somebody who was returning to Disruptor to be in the corner of his stablemates. Bryce Cannon was in the corner of Exotic Youth as they took on the Superstars. Now, this is not a match you would normally see because two teams not really liked by the fans, but the sheer dislike and hatred of Exotic Youth made fans make a choice where they were cheering the Superstars.
How bad are you? How bad do people dislike you? That I literally, I think I said that in our message. Like, only Exotic Youth could make the Superstars get cheered. And here's the thing, they loved them. So now you have babyface Superstars and in Disruptor. Kudos. By the way, they didn't wrestle any different than they normally do.
Right.
But it was cool. I do want to go out of my way to say it was really cool to see Bryce back in the corner. I was disappointed that, of course, he had to get involved. They're using his crutches and shocking, right? But but Bryce, look, in this role, I think we're gonna talk about Bryce potentially in a little bit. Let's or should we do it right here?
No, let's talk about it right now.
Okay. Here's the crazy thing. Bryce Cannon made a post on social media, lauded his accomplishments for the very beginning of the year, before he got injured and before he had his surgery.
Yes.
And he pondered the question, has anybody done anything since then to still knock him off of being the best, the top perch in Georgia? And I would say that the argument was nobody responded because did they not want the clap back?
Right.
Because he put his money where his mouth, and he listed his stuff, and it was kind of like almost a challenge of like, what have you done to pass that? And I've been hurt for a couple months now.
Yes.
Now be the danger zone. Watch this. Now he's going to come out here potentially in a managerial role and say, I can do better than this role than anybody else can do in Georgia. Now, I'm not saying that's what he's going to do. But if he would you put money against Bryce Cannon if he decided, you know what, I'm just going to be managerial role until I'm better, and let's see if anybody can do it better than me?
Could Bryce Cannon go from winning Male Performer of the Year to Manager of the Year during this injury? Is that even possible?
I wouldn't put it past him.
No. Here's the thing, real quick on awards and stuff. I was thinking about this when we were in the pre-show talking. You know what? I'll say that for later in the show. We're going to talk about that. Anyway, Bryce Cannon, if you are a wrestler listening to this or a fan, if you're a fan, tappedoutpod@gmail.com and tell us who you think is that number one.
And why.
And why, yes. But if you are a wrestler, take that to heart. Like one of the top guys in Georgia, the guy who dominated our rankings every week, gone. Has anyone stepped up to fill that spot? And that's a rhetorical question because I don't know the answer to it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Very good question. Anyway, Disruptor will be back at Tannery Row on July the 20th. Get your seats now. They'll have another great card then. Also, Saturday night in Athens, Georgia, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling was there. They had a great show. A match, Aaron Solo over Adam Priest. We just mentioned Adam Priest at Action Wrestling First time Adam Priest has been in Turnbuckle. Hope it's not the last. And then you can't see this anywhere else in Georgia, folks. Billy Gunn, QT Marshall, and Preston Vance in the 6-man main event. And then Glacier came out and made an appearance. Turnbuckle continues to just entertain fans, no matter the size of the crowd. They really feel like they're getting their groove.
Speaking of size, oh, by the way, they also stroll out 7'4", 450 pounds Satnam Singh of AEW / Triple Mania, Triple A fame. The Jeff Jarrett group there. Like, he just is in Athens, man. He's working for Turnbuckle, right? Like, so they're going to have a bunch of more dates coming up. And they're part of that, what we were talking about just running all over the place in multiple dates. That's Turnbuckle. And the crazy thing about Turnbuckle is you don't know. It's going to be, is it Billy Gunn? Is it Glacier showing up? Or I wouldn't be stunned if you see Ernest Miller, Scotty Riggs, or, a lot of the WCW, like the old, and just the legends pop in. Current Ring of Honor, AEW talents, on and on and on. Like, that's just, you cannot, I always tell people, if you see them and they're remotely close, buy a ticket, because you just have no idea who's going to, just show up at Turnbuckle.
Here's a question. I don't know that we've done it on this show, but I've often talked about wrestling being like minor leagues, like AAA, AA, single A, church softball. But we've never really had a promotion that had an official relationship with one of the national promotions. But that is the case with Turnbuckle. There is an unofficial, official relationship with AEW. And so could you say, like, especially in this case, where they've got a talent they've invested a lot in, and they're wanting him to get better and get reps, but could Turnbuckle be the AAA for AEW?
Could be. I mean, yeah, I could clearly see that. I mean, that's just there, And look, the promotion we're going to talk about next, it's a question that I wanted to ponder back to you. There's this thing you brought up to my attention a while back about wrestlers deciding which indies to work for. What do you gain? What relationships and that kind of stuff. There's so many promotions popping up all over the place here in Georgia. The question back would be, we referenced the Anarchy. Could they become the territory for the NWA?
Right.
Then you got, the obvious, the unofficial, obvious relationships of Turnbuckle. We know people at Southern Honor. They have connections all over the place. Like, they make things happen. Is that becoming something that in the long term can determine who the players are? Like, who's your relationships and what can you do just outside of the state that can make you one of the best ones? That yes. I don't know the answer to that question. That's literally a question. Is that going to become one of the most important things with the wrestlers deciding where they work? Is what do I get out of this beyond just a good payday?
I think that there are, and there always will be, Georgia wrestlers or independent wrestlers, not just Georgia, who are just happy to be there. They're not trying to move up. They're happy where they're at. They're happy working for free. And I think you and I look at it from just a different perspective than a lot of them do. They're just kind of moseying along there, just kind of going with the flow. So I think that there are definitely some young wrestlers that they look at Georgia as a stepping stone and not a destination. Sure. If that makes sense. And I think the more promotions that pop up and have those relationships, those yeah, it's fun to watch. It's fun to talk about. It's fun to think about. Um, but only time will tell. Listen, independent wrestling can be a fragile business, and there's promotions that we have hyped talk about. They may not even be around by the end of the year. You just don't ever know what's going to happen. And if you're a wrestler and you put all your eggs in one basket, you better make sure that's a pretty sturdy basket.
Correct.
Bowdon, Georgia, last night. Bullpen Pro Wrestling. I think this was their second show. 400 plus. They're at the high school fundraiser, and Bullpen has shown they've got some connections too.
I think that's kind of where I was leading to is, Brooks Jensen, Ben Buchanan, making his appearance at the last show, drew a lot of eyes, people wondering, like, hey, do they have a connection somehow with NXT? Because Brooks Jensen making that appearance, would it happen again? I know wrestlers who were, like, trying to get on this show, got on the show,
Yes.
because specifically for that reason. Like, that's what they were like, hey, you never know, the relationships. I want to work that show. So that's kind of what I meant by, like, hey, are guys going to look at promotions and say, I want to work there because I think there's the potential for some important eyes to see me there and something come out of it versus working a show where I make a good payday.
Do you think when Brooks Jensen goes to Bullpen and then he goes back to Orlando and he's checking it, hey, man, how'd it go? Well, it went good. Hey, are there conversations of, hey, who'd you see? Anybody we need to take? Like, I'm curious now. I know that Gabe Sapolsky and William Regal and some of those used to watch a lot of independent wrestling and kind of report back. And I'm wondering who's doing that now for WWE, NXT. But if you got your own workers going out there and checking in, if there's an NXT talent at your show, you want to make sure you shake their hand and impress them because you want them to mention their name, your name when you're not around. So I'm not sure when Bullpen's next show is, but they have started off hot.
Oh yeah.
And they have everything they need to kind of continue going and to keep growing. Then today, we're recording this Sunday, June 23rd. Spoiler alert. Southern States is going to be at Steady Hand Beer Company in Atlanta. That is headlined by Eva Lise and Kylie Alexa. And then in Pooler, Georgia, Immortal Lucha Libre. I think they're making their debut. Is that their debut show, or they've had shows before?
I think they've run before. It's the first time we've kind of came into them, and I think we're going to kind of have a conversation about that later.
Yeah.
But by the way, I won't spoil who it was, but there's a name that I heard is going to be working the show down the road that'll surprise a lot of people.
Immortal Lucha Libre
in Pooler, Georgia. Yeah, keep an eye out for it because you're gonna hate the guy. Oh. But I was really surprised when I heard he's going to be on the show down the road, and I was like, all right, that might get me on that. That might get me in the car down there. It's just outside Savannah, I believe. So, yeah, I definitely think that's, down the road they could try to twist our arm and get us in down there. So,
interesting. Well, fans, that's what's been happening over the weekend. Let's take a look now at making the drives. Where can you head out next weekend to hit some good wrestling in Georgia? Hey, just Monday night, wrestling at Southern is going to be at Southern Brewing in Athens. Again, you're going to see a lot of those Turnbuckle stars. You went to this last show that they had at Southern Brewing on a Monday night, and it was a pretty good crowd and a lot more young fans there than you anticipated.
Yeah, fun Southern Brewing, there in Athens, fun show. A lot of like I said, it's a lot of the night, the nightmare kids, as you call them, whatever. That's what I call them. I shouldn't say what should you call them. It's what I call them. But there's a lot of really good talents on that show. Adrian Warden, the Warden's on that show. Brady Booker was on that show. A lot of times, Post Malone, those guys, Jack Jameson. So there's lots of people that are on that show that are like, they're seasoned guys. You've seen some of them on NXT, Ring of Honor, lots of, so, but it's just a really fun show. So if you're up in the Athens area now, full disclosure here, we're recording on Sunday. This card's happening on Monday. And of course we're releasing the show on Tuesday. So, I mean, do the math. If you're behind the paywall, you'll hear this show. Go check it out. If not, give them a follow on social media and catch the next show when they're in town. So I know there are Monday shows. They're fun because there's not a lot of competition. So that's because that's the struggle we face on. I mean, you heard just the struggles of where we split up and we still couldn't cover everything last week. So
right.
But anyway,
there's a lot going on. Then Friday night, June 28th, Platinum Championship Wrestling returns. Nagicism taking on Rose Gold for the PCW title. Have we ever had a female hold the heavyweight title of a Georgia promotion?
I don't know. That's a really good. I'm sure there probably has. I mean, look, for the record, it probably has happened. Somebody let us know, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Send us and let us know. I do know that Crystal Rose was a tag champion.
Okay.
So I remember that. So that I do remember that vividly. So probably so. I wouldn't be shocked if it was true, but I'm just not placing it off the top of my head. But yeah, I could say possibly.
Also Friday night, New Legacy Pro Wrestling. Alexander Lev's going to be there. The Warden, Parker Lee, Exotic Youth's going to be there. And then every Friday night, and I want to spend a moment on this. I was going to talk about it earlier and held off, and that is SEA returning to the Royston Dome. We talked earlier about the great crowd at Hardcore Hell Saturday night. So you have 200 plus on Saturday night. 6 days later, you're coming back. And SEA's been very consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And when it was APW, it was very consistent, but it was consistently what I'd say 40 to 60 fans. We talked about there's 4 promotions running there. So we're not sure when Scrappy's running their second show. Georgia Outlaw Wrestling's running once a month. Anarchy's running. So there's a lot going on. But if you're SCA, is there a way for you to build off Hardcore Hell, or is that some momentum that's not necessarily yours?
So I wasn't there. Obviously, Myron was there, and there was something in hindsight, I wished I would have known. Does SCA pre-sale tickets? I would during the end, like intermission or the end of Hardcore Hell. Get your tickets for SCA this Friday. Blah blah blah. Tell who's in the main event, etc. Because they're running weekly, so they kind of know probably what's going on a week-to-week basis ahead of time. If I were them, during Georgia Outlaw, I'd be selling my tickets. During Anarchy, I'd be selling my tickets. That's just me. I assume that's based on a lot of things. Now, here's a really important conversation, in my opinion. This is, by the way, a conversation that I have argued with people till I'm blue in the face on a national level about AEW and the dreadful TV ratings. Here's my comparison. Expectation versus comparison. There's 2 different things, guys, that we really have to focus on. If SCA's expectations is 50 to 75 every Friday, we wish they were doing 200 every Friday. I really do. I just crush it, kill it, knock it out of the park. But if their expectation level is, hey, we can do 50 to 75 and we're good every single week. Boom, 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 boom. Anarchy's running once a month. Hey, we got to do 150 a month. I don't know what their number is. I'm just saying, like, that's the expectations level in their brains. Don't sit there and say, like, hey, well, Anarchy drew 200, for Hardcore Hell over 200. So if SCA runs 75, that's not good. No, if they run 75 or 100, that's probably really good for them.
Right.
So we can't. I think one of the struggles as fans, again, throwing it back to my comparison for AEW, we throw our expectations and our comparison upon a situation that we have no idea what their expectations are or needs are as
Right.
far as like, hey, do they need 200 in that building to be okay? No, they may need 50.
Right.
And so if they're doing 75 every week, it's a great thing for them. I don't know that.
Right.
You don't know, so nobody knows.
Right.
So that's the fine line to walk about saying all these promotions in that building have different levels of expectations, I'm sure, of what they need and what they want.
Mm-hmm.
So they just need to stay focused on what they need and don't get caught up in the, but hey, if Anarchy's going to draw 200 plus, I'd be selling my tickets at intermission at the end of the show. That's just, just a tip.
Yes, I totally agree with you with that. So then the next night, Saturday, June 29th, Georgia Championship Wrestling is going to be in Buckhead. Alexander Lev taking on Jacob Ashworth. The Nelms brothers facing off in a bull rope match. Holy cow. That should be interesting. Down in Savannah, you got Coastal Empire Wrestling. Hunter James taking on Randy Reno for the Coastal Empire Heavyweight Championship. That should be a great match.
Well, he has since changed his name to Randall Reno.
Oh,
he prefers so.
I apologize.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure because I don't want Randall to be offended by the fact that that he's not Randy, he's Randall. It's one of the rare buildings where I actually like Hunter James.
Ah.
He seems to have his head on his shoulders for some reason when he's on the coast. Maybe that's it.
Maybe
he just he leaves his sanity on the coast, and when he comes inland, he loses it. But Randall Reno, I will say this because look, whether you like him or not, take the kid's personality out of it. He's really, really good in the ring.
Yes.
I'm not saying he's going to beat Randall, but Mr. Reno needs to bring his lunchbox because it's going to be a long day at the office. And 100 James has every opportunity and every skill and everything he needs in his toolbox to become their champion there at Coastal Empire.
The Coastal Empire Chaos title is going to be on the line. Michael the Fro Walker, I don't think he's wrestled this gentleman before. And we've talked about Walker's potential, but he's going to be in there with Rob Killjoy, a great veteran who's going to push him to his limits. And this could be a great opportunity for Michael Walker to maybe step up, maybe get a gold star and get a big win under his belt.
This will be a measuring stick match for Michael the Flying Fro Walker for sure. We're going to find out if he can go with Rob Killjoy, because if anybody has worked Rob Killjoy, they know it's a tall task to keep up with him. So I think if he walks out, I think everybody's going to kind of say, okay, kid's further along than we probably are giving him credit for. We're probably underestimating, underappreciating, and underrating Michael the Flying Fro Walker.
Yes, absolutely. Also Saturday night in Jefferson, Georgia, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling is going to be part of a festival, not your typical wrestling show, but if you're near Jefferson, Georgia, and you want to go take part in the festival and see some wrestling, you can do that. And it seems like that's kind of what they're going to be doing. Turnbuckle is going to be popping up in different places, doing some different things. But anyway, there's a ton of wrestling out there every weekend, and next week is no different.
So you're still out next weekend, right? This is your last week of camp, right? You're out this weekend.
It's my last weekend of camp. It's my last week of camp. Next week is just sleeping, recovering, and then I've got some more traveling and stuff. They just put me on the road during the summer, and I go. But I'm hopefully by mid-July, early July, we'll be hitting some more wrestling up.
Now that we've looked at the calendar, we've kind of gone over everything. I'm going to try to hit the wife up one more time for Coastal Empire on June 29th. Get down there. I would love to see Hunter James capture that title. So, yeah, Coastal Empire is the one I'm going to try to talk her into. I just did not realize it's like 4.5 hours from my house. It's
right.
A pretty good drive. So it's a commitment because it's an overnight stay. It's not a trip I can turn around. I could, but I'm not going to turn around and drive back. It's just way too far.
The one thing that just to kind of give a little peek into my scheduling. So July the 6th, I'm driving to Roanoke, Virginia, and I'm going to start looking for, are there shows within an hour of Roanoke, Virginia that I could hit up on Saturday night? Got no plans. I would rather go to a wrestling show than sit in the hotel. So if you know of any wrestling shows, fans, hit us up, send me a message. Would love to check that out. And that's kind of like if I'm traveling, if I'm on the road for work, I try to look and see, okay, what wrestling shows can I hit up? So I would love to find one of those.
So I'm gonna plug in here real quick. Ditto. I got to get a calendar. So
yeah.
So here's kind of you want to talk about really pulling behind the curtain. July the 10th through July the 19th.
Uh-huh.
I haven't nailed down our destination because my wife and I when we do trips, we do them really different. We're going to do a road trip. And I think we're going to end up somewhere in Utah or like Colorado, down maybe potentially all the way down to the Grand Canyon.
Right.
Just driving and doing like a site. We want to go see some pretty country is what we want to see. If you're running a wrestling promotion and somewhere in those dates and you're out west, hit me up because the wife has said, I'm down to stop and we can go to a wrestling show while we're out there. Particularly, the problem is it's not a week. There's only one weekend involved there. I'm not really sure if our friends at Rocky Mountain Pro there in Jefferson County in Colorado, if they're going to be running or not. If they are, let me know, and we'll try to maybe swing in there and catch them and see a show while we're there in that area. So, but anyway, yeah. So hopefully we can catch some. Like we are going to attempt, folks. Yes, not just inside the state. Try to get outside the state as well if we can.
Yes, I mean, we love professional wrestling, and we like to see different styles. We like to see different promotions, different setups. That's kind of what we live for. So again, if you're in those areas and you would like for us to come check out your show, please let us know. We're good fans. We behave ourselves. We'll buy something from your concession stand, and we'll talk about you on the podcast.
Yeah.
So you and I were talking before the show, and we talked about this briefly before we were talking about Bryce Cannon. And this is what I was going to say, because the question I want to ask you is, with the injury to Bryce Cannon, he was kind of like our runaway headliner for Wrestler of the Year. My question to you was, okay, who now is positioning themselves as a potential Wrestler of the Year in Georgia? But I want to, there's a caveat there. Because what I find is you and I do not get a vote. And what I'm finding is over the last several years, when I've tried to make prediction about the awards, is that the awards are typically very unpredictable. So I guess there's different criteria or whatever, but who is somebody who's caught your eye that maybe you weren't expecting?
Well, they're not. So that's the thing, because I think, I understand, and I do. I get a lot of people get frustrated who are like, hey, it's a lot of the same guys at the top, and, it's, but I'm like, for most of the time, there's the kind of a reason that these guys are at the top. Now, I'm not getting into the debate of the whys at this moment of, why, and, oh, it's this and it's that. That's why they're at the top, whatever. But I mean, look, Judias, he's always up there in the top, right? Okay, let's go ahead and, by the way, we want to say this. The only reason, and I've said this time and time again on every podcast we're on, Krule's not a Georgia wrestler in my opinion. He's a national talent at this point. He's on MLW. He's one of the top, but he's also wrestling basically constantly across the country. So, that's why, like, somebody asked me, like, hey, he's one of my favorite. Yeah, he is one of my favorite wrestlers. I saw him at Action. Great. By the way, you want the reason? That's why I watched, one of the main reasons I watched the Action show, right?
Right.
But, that's why he never hear me say that's my guy that I would say is the guy, because I don't think of him as a Georgia wrestler. I think he's bigger than Georgia. But then there are guys like Nick Halen's always in the conversation now, because he's top guy everywhere he's going. He's in main stories everywhere he goes. Hey, are we all doing a disservice by not mentioning the guy who's your reigning defending wrestler of the year, Krule? Like, that's, hey, is anybody, what's the old saying? To be the man, you got to beat the man. Well,
right.
He hadn't been beat yet, so shouldn't he be in the conversation?
So this may prove a point. You just mentioned two guys, Skrilla and Nick Halen. Do they wrestle on a single promotion together? Or are they both two in separate promotions? Because Nick Halen's not at Platinum. Nick Halen's not at Coastal. Nick Halen...
Deep South. I mean, he's not
at Deep South. He's not at. I could list a bunch. Nick Halen's not at IWE. So I personally think it's not the same system we had 5 to 10 years ago. So if you keep making the argument it's the same guys every promotion, that is simply not true.
It's funny because in wrestling, like the comment that I made earlier, do you got to go over to get over? And I was like, no, I don't think that's true. And most wrestlers, by the way, agree with that comment. So here's my thing: are you asking who's the best wrestler, in Georgia? Okay, well, why is Chip Day not being mentioned?
Right?
Why? There's a million guys we can sit here and go, well, what about this guy?
Maybe the real question is not, hey, who's the best wrestler in Georgia? Maybe the real question is, who was the best booked wrestler in Georgia? Who was the best utilized wrestler in Georgia? Because you mentioned Krule. Krule may be one of the best, but if he's not being utilized, if he's not working a lot of places, then obviously he wouldn't fit that category. I just think here's another question I wanted to ask. So, spoiler alert, fans, while we're talking about this, in 2 weeks, we're going to be recording our mid-year special. It's going to release July 16th. We're going to talk about all this. It's going to be a whole show talking about, hey, who do you think wrestler of the year, tag team of the year, all those things that we normally talk about. We're going to kind of hit that mid-year. And then in 6 months, we'll look back and be like, okay, where were we right? Where were we wrong? Who made a good run?
Were we an idiot? Were we how dumb were we? We couldn't, yeah.
Right. I don't think we're going to be too far off on some things. But I think those are always just fun conversations. They're totally subjective.
Mm-hmm.
And you could get 100 people to record a podcast and you would get different answers. And that's what makes so great about it. So fans, to prepare for that, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Send us who you think, all the awards that you can think of. Who are we leaving out? Who do you think? Is there a ring announcer out there that you think is great? What's the best match you've seen? What's a great feud you've seen? Those are the things we want to hear about. Those are the things we want to talk about. And we want to talk about in a little different way where it's maybe not word for word what certain award categories are, but kind of like our own twist on it. But I'm excited to talk about that.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, let me throw in there, you brought up ring announcer.
Mm-hmm.
There's a diamond in the rough that has been discovered. At Disruptor last night, he by the way, he does ring announce for wrestling at Southern. It's the first time I'd seen him. Now he is at Disruptor Wrestling he did the ring announcing there last night. Matt Westlake, tip your cap to the guy. Great job. Kudos. That's all I'll say. We'll leave it there for now.
Yes. So let's end with this. I know we're the booker at ringside is holding up the pencil. Real quick, we've been talking about different things. We started doing this show in February. What's been the biggest surprise for you since we started doing this show?
Dude, it's got to be. It's the sheer new promotions this year alone. Here, let me back up. Maybe that's not the right way to say it. Every year, and look, the running joke in indie wrestling is, tax promotion. It's tax season, tax promotion season, blah 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 blah. How about new promotions that are good? That look like they're here for a while. They don't look like they're going to be here for 2 shows, be broke and gone.
Right.
That's a change. That's a change.
Yes.
And by the way, let's be honest with ourselves. We have kind of discussed this a little bit in the past, where we've talked about promotions that, like, we've kind of, and I don't want to say we didn't discover them, but like we came across them doing this and we just kind of didn't know. And we were shocked. And some of them, by the way, are really good.
Yes.
And it's, look, we joked about the Power Four, the Big Four, whatever you want to call them, the promotions or whatever. And we knew those guys, right? We know who they are.
Right.
But it was like, well, what? And then slowly over time, we've learned, like Turnbuckle pops up. And we've immediately gone to them. They're a player. They're not even just like, hey, they ain't new. They're a player. Coastal Empire, like they were not, like, in full disclosure, like no clue, not on my radar 6 months ago. To now see how good they're doing down there, like, and me sitting here talking about, I got to get the wife to see, maybe we can make that trip down to Savannah and check them out, because nothing but good things coming out of there.
Right.
Phoenix.
Yes.
Like you brought that to my attention, and I mean, like, tell about that. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, they have literally, I mean, the sheer promotions that have either launched this year or had a relaunch. I think Coastal's kind of been a relaunch under Zach Mosley. Bullpen, Championship Wrestling, Anarchy coming back. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. You have IWE, which continues to be strong. I mean, you've got some of those main players that just continue to be super steady. To be honest, if you had told me at the beginning of the year, hey, Action Wrestling is going to start running 2 to 3 shows a month in different venues, I'm like, what in the world? Like, the expansion of Georgia Wrestling, Kraken in Tifton. We're seeing new promotions in new towns.
Yeah.
That I agree with you. I also think, and I want to be very careful how I say this, I feel like there has been a feeling in Georgia wrestling that there was some underrepresentation in how promotions were covered, simply because, and you and I know this firsthand, if you only have like 3 or 4 people who are out covering shows, you cannot cover every show. You just can't.
Correct.
And if you and I are picking which shows to go to, we're always going to have certain shows that we're going to no matter what, or that we're going to prefer, because we are fans first and foremost. And so I think what has happened, what I hope our podcast has done, is given another outlet to maybe some of those promotions that felt underappreciated or undervalued or underrepresented, because we've been able to build those relationships pretty quickly. And that's not to say anything bad about others covering Georgia wrestling. I wish more people were covering Georgia wrestling. And so I think maybe the biggest surprise was like how hungry people were for what we're doing. And that's been a really humbling thing.
I mean, let's talk. I mean, like, look, promotions that, and like I said, and by the way, I'm going to piggyback on something you said just a second ago. Covering the entire indie scene in Georgia is a near impossible task.
Yes.
I would do nothing, and I tell people I would do nothing but tip my cap to anybody that's even remotely attempting to try to do this. Nothing but love and respect to those guys that do it. It's a very, look, and I'm going to give a shout out to one specific thing, and here's why. Everybody knows that the Tapped Out Podcast Network has nothing but love for Rob Rod.
Yes.
Rob Rod went out of his way to go to shows that, like, look, I can't say this in a good way. I can't. I've thought about how I would
Yeah.
say this, and I can't. Like a lot of shows, people are just like, nah, I'm going to go to this one. I'm going to go over here instead. I'm not going to go. But for him to go, he would go to shows that were drawing 50. He would go to shows that were, they were not they were not the, the, I know a lot of people call it the click, the clicky crowds and the promotions and
Right.
stuff. But like the in crowds or the big promotions or the ones that were getting all the love, Rob went out of his way to cover, and that's kind of what we were trying to say. Like, like we were talking about, like Premier All Star. Like, hey, if they're going to give us, we said this last week, if you're going to give us the information, we will go out of our way. Nick will accept the fact that we're going to go an hour and 10 versus an hour because we're going to make sure we get your stuff in. You're going to,
Right.
You went out of your way to get it to me. I promise you, we'll talk about it. But it's also promotions like OSWA who don't get any, they
Right.
run up there and, but no, if guys are going to put in the work and they're going to send us the information, look, tip your caps to the Bobby Pophams who are running OSWA. Tip your caps to, to the good Reverend who's sending us that information from Premier All-Star. Like, we will go out of our way to try to get you out, your name out there. That's simple.
Yeah. We are not able to, it's just not just to cover it, but to give insightful analysis. We need the results. We need that from other people. And so it's been really awesome. I know this is a hard time of year because I'm not able to go to as many shows, but it has been such a fun, it's just been a fun ride so far, and I'm looking for the rest. So fans, you never know what's coming to the network. We've teased a new show that's coming. We've got that mid-year special coming up in a couple of weeks. You got to go to patreon.com/tappedoutpod. You got to become a member. You can also go to YouTube and become a member there. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, turn on the notifications. If you're audio, subscribe or add or whatever terms they're using for podcast now. Downloads are big, listens are big. We just appreciate all of your support. It really means the world to us. It's truly humbling to go out and people. It was weird. I had a special friend with me, and she's out, and like people are coming up. Hey, love your show, and I'm like, okay, and so it's just a really, really cool thing. So, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, man. And like I said, I had a young man walk up to me at Disruptor last night. He's starting a podcast, and he was like, hey, man, would you give me any advice? I'm like, yeah, plenty off the air. Like, I'll tell you what it is. Don't, just be like us, to be too stupid to quit. That's, that's
Right.
the kind of thing. But, I mean, look, we'll talk, and we go out of our way to talk to the talents. We go out of our way to talk to promoters and owners and, anybody. Like, yeah, we just appreciate all the support across the board. Cause like, this doesn't, and people, I told this is what I told him. Like, look, this doesn't work without an appreciation and a cooperation with the promoters, the owners, the talents. If you're trying to do this all on your own, good luck, man. It ain't going to work.
Right. You got to network, and you got to build those relationships. And I know that a lot of our success is based on relationships you and Myron have been building for 8 years. And so I really, really appreciate that. We also appreciate you watching and listening every week, fans. And so once again, for Nick McDaniel, this is Heath Mulligan. And thanks for listening to this week's Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast. I'm Heath Mulligan, and we'll see you at the matches.